By the way, my brother said, clinking his glass so hard the stem whined, we all voted you're not hosting Thanksgiving anymore. You're too controlling. And frankly, my husband added, dabbing at a spotless plate like a judge with a gavel, no one likes your food. A laugh rippled from the table. Not loud, just sharp enough to cut. The cranberry sauce held its breath. My kids looked at me, confusion brimming at their lashes like tears that hadn't decided who they belonged to yet. The house I'd polished to a shine suddenly felt like a hotel lobby I wasn't welcome in. Hy everyone, my name is Mariel, and my hands smell like rosemary and burnt sugar. I have a gift for making quiet rooms taste warm. I set places with care, I season by listening, and I still believe a table can heal people who don't know how to apologize. I stood at the head of the table where I'd laid out what took 2 days and a whole heart. Butter lattice turkey, sourdough stuffing studded with golden apricots, gravy that cooled in glossy ripples, pies that blinked under their sugar crusts. This feast was a map of how I'd tried, again, to make family feel like a place. A place with chairs for everyone, especially the ones who always arrive hungry for something they won't name. My brother tasted silence like it was dessert. He loved an audience, he'd assembled one from our own blood. My husband, Greg, leaned back, the kind of lean that says I'm above this and, also, I planned it. He squeezed my shoulder like a reminder, play nice. Thanks for letting me know, I said, and the room tilted. My voice was gentle on purpose, a soft napkin laid over a very sharp knife. The kids' eyes flicked to my face, searching for the flair I didn't give them. I gave them steadiness instead. It tasted like clove and restraint. Chairs scraped. Someone coughed performatively. My mother-in-law reached for a second slice of pecan pie she didn't even like. I collected plates and smiles, and the two felt the same weight. In the kitchen, steam fogged the window until the outside world blurred into watercolor. I rinsed a pan slowly, the warm water unknotting something inside me that had forgotten how to breathe. Greg's words kept circling, thin and elegant as wire. Controlling. No one likes your food. The faucet hissed back, remember. Remember who bought the groceries when his card had a glitch. Remember who paid the deposit on his guaranteed investment. Remember whose name is on the catering license, the permits, the service contracts, the phone numbers that ring when people want meals that feel like holidays even on a Tuesday. Mine. Mariel, my brother called, faux concern laced with theater. You're not mad, are you? No, I said, drying my hands. I'm not mad. I touched the edge of the serving tray and the metal hummed like a quiet vow. I'm just done offering seconds to people who spit out the first plate. I walked back out, refilled water glasses, kissed my daughter's forehead, and let the room believe I was what they named me, small, pliable, grateful. The turkey timer pinged in the background, a single, silver note. Across the table, my brother raised his glass again, ready to crown himself host for next year. Greg smirked, his favorite accessory. I smiled wider than their pettiness and set down the carving knife. The blade caught the chandelier's light and threw it back across the ceiling like a signal only I could read. Some dinners end with coffee. This one ended with a recipe they couldn't taste yet. Silence, patience, and a promise that cools as it sets. The night after Thanksgiving, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it sliced the dark into uneven pieces. Greg snored beside me, his breath sour with whiskey and smugness. The echo of his words, no one likes your food, clung to the corners of the room like cobwebs. My children's faces floated in the silence, their little brows furrowed with worry they didn't yet know how to name. I pressed my palm against my chest and felt the slow beat of my heart, steady, deliberate. That steadiness was mine. They couldn't vote it away. The next morning, dishes still stacked in the sink, Greg strolled into the kitchen as if he were the king surveying a conquered kingdom. You'll thank me one day, he said, scratching his jaw. Now you can relax. You take these things too seriously. I slid a mug of coffee across the counter toward him. My lips smiled, my silence burned. He mistook it for surrender. That was his first mistake. Days bled into weeks. I went through motions, packing school lunches, showing up for work at the catering company, balancing books at midnight. But beneath every chore hummed a new rhythm, like a pot simmering low, patient, waiting. They thought they'd taken my stage away. What they didn't realize was Thanksgiving had never been about applause. It had been my classroom, my theater, my workshop. I had built more than meals. I had built connections with people outside this family, clients who trusted me, strangers who respected me, communities who needed me. When I wasn't cooking for them, I started cooking for myself. I designed menus, partnered with local farmers, taught my daughter how to knead dough, let my son stir until flour bloomed across the counter like snow. Their giggles felt like medicine. Then, one cold January evening, the phone rang. My brother's voice crackled through the line, sharp but softened with something new, desperation. "Mariel, look, we messed up. Can you help us with Mom's party? No one else can pull it off." Greg shouted in the background, "Ask her again. Tell her we'll pay." I leaned against the counter, staring at the reflection of my own face in the dark window. My children sat at the table, homework spread, eyes flicking to me. They didn't need me to answer right away, they already knew. I let the silence stretch, like dough rising under a damp cloth. Then, with a voice calm as sharpened steel, I whispered into the receiver. "Now you're hungry." And for the first time, it was their turn to taste the waiting. The phone trembled in my hand as my brother stammered. "It's Mom's 70th, Mariel. Everyone's coming. We can't risk it falling apart. Please." I could almost see his face, jaw tight, ego cracked. 4 years, he thrived on being the center of gravity, pulling everyone else into orbit. But now, without me, the table was empty space. Greg's voice pierced through the background, sharp and impatient. "Tell her we'll pay double. She owes us at least that." "Owes them?" I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, as if it could smother the insult. My children watched me from across the room, pencils paused above their homework. Their eyes asked the same question, "Will you give in?" I turned my back to them, whispering so only the silence heard. Interesting how quick a crown falls when the feast collapses. "Mariel," my brother prodded, his voice climbing toward panic. "You there?" I let the pause stretch until the air felt fragile. Finally, I spoke. "I remember what you said at Thanksgiving." He exhaled, a jagged sound. Look, it was a joke. Everyone was tired. You're the only one who can do this." I closed my eyes and pictured the kitchen that night, hands raw from chopping, oven mitts damp with steam, their laughter cutting into me like shards. The memory hardened into something unbreakable. "I'll think about it," I said at last, my tone soft but laced with control. "But if I do this, it will be on my terms. My menu. My price. My rules." The silence on his end stretched long enough for me to taste his surrender. Then, with a reluctant swallow, he muttered, "Fine." I hung up before Greg could bark another word through the receiver. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the quiet rush of reclaiming something they thought they'd stolen. At the table, my daughter whispered, "Are you going to help them, Mom?" I smoothed her hair back, pressing a kiss to her crown. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people need to learn what hunger feels like before they can appreciate who feeds them." Outside, the wind rattled bare branches against the window. It sounded like applause for a play only just beginning. And in that applause, I felt my plan rising, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. The weeks leading up to my mother's birthday were a strange theater of apologies and bargains. Texts buzzed in at odd hours. "Can we meet? We'll cover all expenses, just please confirm." Even Greg, too proud to look me in the eye after Thanksgiving, slipped me an envelope one night, muttering, "Advance payment." I took the envelope, counted the bills under the kitchen light, and said nothing. The silence unnerved him more than any argument ever could. My children became my quiet conspirators. They saw the late-night planning, the menus scrawled across note cards, the phone calls I didn't return. They saw me taste sauces with a precision that wasn't about flavor, it was about control. "Mom," my son asked one evening, "are you making food for them?" "Yes," I said, folding dough beneath my palms. "But this time it won't be about family. It will be about a lesson." The house smelled of roasted garlic, cinnamon, and something sharper, resolve. I crafted dishes that looked like gifts but carried unspoken truths. A cake layered with bitterness beneath its sweet glaze. A roast glazed in honey but seasoned with heat that lingered long after the bite. Every plate would be a mirror, showing them exactly who they were. On the night of the party, I arrived at the hall early. The tables gleamed, silverware catching the glow of chandeliers. My brother paced nervously, tie crooked, sweat at his temples. Greg leaned in the corner, already on his second drink. "You're late," my brother snapped when he saw me. I smiled, setting down trays heavy with the weight of their need. "No, I'm right on time." As guests trickled in, whispers followed me, admiration for the spread, praise for the detail, recognition of skill. The same family who had voted me out now watched as strangers celebrated me. And in that moment, beneath the glittering lights, I realized, revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it simply serves. Plates clattered, laughter filled the hall, and my mother's birthday swelled into a celebration too polished for anyone to sense the undercurrent. I moved through the tables like a conductor, orchestrating flavors and timing, letting each guest experience my craft. Compliments rippled toward me. "This is exquisite, who catered this?" And I watched as my brother's smile tightened, his pride shrinking under the glow that was mine. Greg tried to insert himself, bragging to anyone who'd listen. "My wife, well, technically ex soon, but, you know, she has always been good in the kitchen." His words stumbled, slurred with liquor. He wanted to own me, even in praise, as though my skill belonged to him. The guests nodded politely but their eyes slid past him, landing on me. My mother, regal in her silk shawl, pulled me close during a toast. "Mariel," she whispered, her voice softer than I'd expected, "you've outdone yourself." She squeezed my hand, and for a fleeting second, I felt the warmth of approval I had chased my whole life. Then I remembered Thanksgiving, the way she hadn't defended me, and the warmth curdled. When dessert arrived, the hall hushed. I unveiled the centerpiece, a towering cake, laid high, its surface gleaming with sugared fruit. Gasps scattered like confetti. My brother leaned close, jaw tense. "You'll get your money. Just don't embarrass us." I tilted the knife against the frosting, the blade gleaming beneath the chandeliers. "Embarrassment is earned," I murmured. Slice by slice, I served them all. They ate, they cheered, they applauded. They didn't taste the restraint in every bite, the reminder hidden beneath sugar and cream. But I did. And so did my children, who sat proudly at a corner table, watching their mother command a room without raising her voice. By the end of the night, as the applause swelled, my brother's face flushed with defeat. Greg staggered outside, ignored. And me? I stood taller than I ever had, knowing the real course hadn't been served yet. That moment was still to come. The night ended with handshakes, empty plates, and whispered congratulations. I packed up slowly, savoring the hush after chaos, like the kitchen's heartbeat had finally slowed. My brother hovered nearby, awkward gratitude etched across his face. "You saved us," he admitted, voice low, as if the confession itself tasted sour. I slipped my gloves off, folding them neatly into my bag. "No," I corrected, eyes steady on his, "I saved myself. You just happened to benefit." Greg stumbled back inside, cheeks ruddy, tie hanging loose. "You think this changes anything?" he sneered, swaying. "You're still nothing without us. Don't forget who gave you your place." I almost laughed. The irony was too sweet. "Greg, you've mistaken being fed for being powerful. That was your second mistake." My mother approached, cane tapping against the polished floor. She looked between us, her eyes a storm of pride and guilt. "Mariel," she said, "your food brought everyone together tonight. Maybe we judged you too harshly." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. There was some, but not enough. Apologies, I'd learned, often arrive only when people fear losing what they never valued. I gathered my things, my children falling into step beside me, their little hands curling into mine. Outside, the air was cold, sharp with winter. Snowflakes drifted under the lamplight, settling on my hair like tiny crowns. "Mom," my daughter whispered, "does this mean they'll be nice now?" I knelt so my eyes met hers. "Sweetheart, people don't change just because you feed them. But we do, we learn who they are, and we stop letting them take more than they deserve." Behind me, I could hear the faint echo of applause still bleeding out of the hall. For them, it was the sound of celebration. For me, It was the closing curtain of a play I had rewritten in silence. And yet, the final act, the one they'd never see coming, was still waiting, patient, in the wings. 2 days after the party, I sat at my kitchen table with the envelope of money they had given me. It lay unopened, heavy with meaning. My children watched as I slid it into a drawer without counting. "We're not doing this for their dollars," I told them quietly. "We're doing it so they remember." By evening, the calls began again. My brother's voice was sharp with panic. "Muriel, people keep asking for your number. They want to hire you, catering, events, everything. We didn't plan for that." I smiled into the receiver, my voice calm. "Maybe you should have thought of that before you voted me out." Greg's voice chimed in from the background, bitter and jagged. "She can't do this without us. She needs family connections." But the truth was already louder than him. Within a week, I had 3 new contracts, each larger than anything I'd managed before. My name spread not through family whispers but through strangers' praise, through the taste of dishes crafted with patience and resolve. I watched as my brother tried to insert himself, claiming partial credit, while Greg attempted to charm clients who barely acknowledged him. Their desperation unfolded like spoiled fruit, rotting faster the more they tried to hold on. Meanwhile, my children and I built something stronger, a business that belonged only to us. Nights were filled with the hum of ovens, the scribble of recipes, the rhythm of laughter. My kitchen, once a battleground of criticism, became our fortress. One evening, as I tucked my daughter into bed, she whispered, "Mom, I like when they need you." I brushed her hair back, smiling softly. "It's not about them needing me, sweetheart. It's about us not needing them." And as I closed her door, the silence of the house felt different now, not lonely, not heavy, but alive with possibility. The family thought they had banished me. In truth, they had freed me. And freedom, I knew, was the sharpest knife of all. Spring arrived with blossoms pressing against the windows, their petals pale against the morning light. My business thrived, orders stacked, events booked months in advance, praise spilling in from strangers who now felt more like kin than the family who once ridiculed me. It was during one of those bright mornings that my phone rang again. My brother's number glowed on the screen. I let it buzz until the sound cut off, silence folding back over the room like a calm tide. Seconds later, a message appeared: "We can't do Thanksgiving without you. Please." My chest tightened, not with longing, but with clarity. I remembered that night, the mocking, the smirks, the laughter that made my children shrink. I had smiled then, saying thanks for letting me know. They thought they had stripped me of my place. Instead, they had built the foundation of my freedom. That November, as the leaves fell gold and brittle, I set a table again, but this time in a hall rented with my own earnings. 40 guests arrived, none of them family by blood, yet all of them bound by something deeper: respect, gratitude, trust. My children carried trays with pride, cheeks flushed from laughter, voices bright with belonging. "Mom," my son whispered as we set down the final dish, "is this our Thanksgiving now?" I looked around at the glowing faces, the plates steaming with food crafted by our hands alone. "Yes," I said, voice steady, eyes clear. "This is ours. And no one can take it away." Outside, the night stretched soft and endless, but inside, the light burned steady. I thought of my brother's calls, Greg's slurred taunts, the vote that was supposed to silence me. They had given me the greatest gift, the chance to rise without them. Poetic justice, I realized, doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply lives on in the sound of your children's laughter at a table you built yourself.